The 7 great ships of the docile Confederation hung in the darkness of space like metal gods. Each one was the size of a small moon. Each one held the power to destroy worlds. They had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and no species had ever truly challenged them. Commander Tahoe stood at the observation deck of the flagship Eternal Dominance watching the stars. His four-fingered hand rested against the clear barrier that separated him from the vacuum of space. Unlike most docile officers, he preferred to be alone during his rest periods. His colleagues found this strange, but they respected his rank enough not to question it. "Commander," a voice spoke from behind him. "High Admiral Suk requests your presence in the command center." Tahoe turned to face the messenger, a young officer named Hyun. "Did the Admiral say why?" "No, sir. Only that it was urgent." Tahoe nodded. "I will be there shortly." After the messenger left, Tahoe took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the borders of docile space, something was stirring. He could feel it. The others would laugh if he said such a thing. Dociles did not believe in feelings or intuition. They believed in facts and science, in the cold reality of their superiority. But Tahoe knew better. He had a secret that would end his career, perhaps even his life, if discovered. Half of his genetic material was not docile at all. The command center buzzed with activity when Tahoe arrived. Officers moved quickly between stations, their scaled skin reflecting the blue light of the many screens. At the center of the room stood High Admiral Suk, her tall frame draped in the black and silver uniform of docile high command. 6 red stripes on her shoulder marked her as one of the highest-ranking military leaders in the Confederation. "Commander Tahoe," she said without turning to look at him. "What do you make of this?" The main screen showed a distant star system. Nothing remarkable. A yellow star with several planets orbiting it. One of the planets was highlighted with a pulsing red circle. "A new system for colonization?" Tahoe asked. "No," Suk replied. "Watch." The image zoomed in on the third planet from the star. It was mostly blue, with patches of green and brown. Clouds swirled in its atmosphere. But what caught Tahoe's attention were the small, artificial objects orbiting the planet. Ships, dozens of them. "We detected unusual energy signatures from this system 2 cycles ago," Suk explained. "Scout ship Righteous Authority was sent to investigate. This is what they found." The image changed again, showing one of the alien ships up close. It was small and ugly by docile standards, all sharp angles and exposed parts. No elegance, no sign of advanced technology. "A new species," Tahoe said quietly. "Yes. They call themselves humans. Their communications are primitive and easy to intercept. They appear to be a Class 3 civilization at best." Class 3. Limited threat, suitable for eventual integration into the Confederation, which was a polite term for conquest and servitude. "Have they detected our presence?" Tahoe asked. "No." Captain Hyun kept the Righteous Authority at a safe distance. "We've been observing them for nearly a full cycle now." The screen changed again, showing images of the humans themselves. They were strange creatures. 2 arms, 2 legs, no scales or proper skin protection. They walked upright and appeared to communicate with sounds from their mouths, like many lesser species. "They look fragile," one of the other officers commented. "Indeed," Suk agreed. "Their bodies are mostly water. No natural armor, no significant physical strength. Their reaction time is slow, their senses limited." Tahoe studied the images carefully. Something about these creatures bothered him, though he couldn't say what. "What about their technology?" "Primitive," Dr. Jisoo answered, stepping forward. As the head xenobiologist on the flagship, she was responsible for assessing new species. They have achieved space travel, but only within their own system. They use combustion rockets and basic ion drives. Their weapons are mostly projectile-based or crude-directed energy, nothing that could penetrate even our most basic shields. And yet, Taiho said, "They have survived and reached the stars." Suk gave him a curious look. Many species reach this level before being properly introduced to the Confederation. There is nothing special about them. Of course, Admiral, Taiho said quickly. I simply wonder what other capabilities they might have that we haven't observed yet. That is why you are here, Commander. Suk said. The Council has decided to establish monitoring outposts near the human system, rather than making immediate contact. You will lead this operation. Study them. Learn their weaknesses. Prepare the integration protocols. Taiho bowed his head slightly. I am honored, Admiral. You should be, Suk said coldly. Your recent papers on efficient integration techniques have impressed the Council. Do not disappoint us. When do I begin? Immediately. You will take command of the Silent Observer and 3 support vessels. You have 1 full cycle to complete your assessment. 1 cycle, equivalent to about 2 Earth years. Not much time to study an entire species. I will not fail, Admiral. Suk turned away, her attention already moving to other matters. See that you don't. Dismissed. 3 months later, Taiho sat in his private quarters aboard the Silent Observer reviewing the latest data on the humans. The monitoring outposts had been successfully established at the edge of the human system, hidden behind the orbit of a gas giant they called Neptune. From here, they could intercept all Earth communications and observe human activities without being detected. The more Taiho learned about humans, the more uneasy he felt. Computer, display the technological advancement timeline again, he ordered. A holographic chart appeared in the air before him. It showed human technological progress over the past century of their time. The line moved slowly at first, then began to curve upward at an increasing rate. Compared to standard dorsal patterns, a second line appeared, the typical advancement curve of species studied by the Confederation. It was much flatter, much more predictable. Humans were learning too quickly. Most species took thousands of years to progress from basic flight to space travel. Humans had done it in less than 100 years, and they showed no signs of slowing down. A chime sounded, indicating someone at his door. Enter, Taiho said, quickly dismissing the hologram. Dr. Jisoo walked in, carrying a datapad. Commander, I have the latest cultural analysis you requested. Thank you, Doctor. What have you found? Jisoo sat down across from him. They are a most unusual species, highly fractious. They have hundreds of different countries and political systems. They fight constantly amongst themselves over resources, ideology, territory. By all logic, they should have destroyed themselves long ago. And yet they haven't, Taiho observed. No. Instead, they seem to advance through conflict. Their greatest technological leaps come during or immediately after their wars. Jisoo looked troubled. It defies conventional xenosociological models. What about their psychology? Their motivations? Complicated. They are driven by emotional responses as much as logical ones. They form strong social bonds and will act against their own self-interest to protect their social groups. They are capable of both extraordinary cruelty and surprising altruism, sometimes simultaneously. Taiho nodded slowly. Unpredictable, then. Highly. But also, Jisoo hesitated. Yes, they show remarkable adaptability. They occupy almost every environment on their planet, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. When faced with obstacles, they rarely retreat. They innovate, change their approach. It's almost as if they enjoy the challenge. Something cold settled in Taiho's stomach. This was exactly what concerned him. Thank you, Doctor. Please continue your analysis. I want daily reports on any new observations. After Jisoo left, Taiho returned to his data. He didn't include his most troubling findings in the official reports to High Admiral Suk. She wouldn't understand his concerns anyway. The docile had been the dominant force in this sector for so long that they couldn't imagine any real threat from a newly discovered species. But Tejo knew better. His human mother had told him stories before she died. Stories of human determination, of their refusal to accept defeat, of their ability to achieve the impossible simply because no one told them it couldn't be done. The Confederation was making a dangerous mistake in underestimating them. Captain Hyun paced the bridge of the Righteous Authority *, his tail swishing with agitation. "Report again," he ordered. The sensor officer looked up from her station. "The human vessel is still approaching, sir. Current trajectory will bring it within visual range of Outpost 3 in approximately 30 minutes. "Impossible," Hyun muttered. "The outpost is shielded. They shouldn't be able to detect it." "They may not have detected it specifically, sir," the navigator suggested. "They appear to be on a mining expedition to the asteroid belt. Their course may be coincidental." Hyun wasn't convinced. For the past few weeks, human ships had been venturing farther into their system than ever before. This was the third such coincidence in a month. "Options?" he asked. "We could destroy them," his second-in-command suggested. "One shot from our main cannon would leave no evidence. And when their authorities notice a missing ship, they would send others to investigate." "We could alter their course," the navigator said. "A focused gravitational pulse would push them away from the outpost without damaging their vessel. They would likely attribute it to a natural phenomenon." Hyun considered this. "Do it. Minimum force necessary." The crew moved to follow his orders, but before they could act, the sensor officer called out, "Sir, the human vessel has changed course. They're heading directly toward us now." "What? How?" "We're cloaked." "Unknown, sir, but they've increased speed and are powering up what appear to be scanning systems." "Impossible." The Righteous Authority's cloaking technology was among the best in the Confederation. No Class 3 civilization should be able to detect them. "Battle stations," Hyun ordered. "Prepare to intercept." The docile ship moved swiftly, positioning itself to cut off the human vessel's approach. Their plan was simple. A show of force should be enough to send the primitive humans running back to their planet. The human ship was small, barely 1/20th the size of the Righteous Authority *. Its engines glowed blue against the blackness of space as it pushed forward. No weapons were visible on its hull, though it did have several mechanical arms that were likely used for mining operations. "Open communications," Hyun ordered. "Let's see how they react to us." The communications officer worked at her station, then looked up in confusion. "Sir, they're not responding to standard protocols. Try all frequencies. They must have some way off." "Sir," the sensor officer interrupted. "They've launched something." Small objects, dozens of them, were suddenly streaming from the human vessel, spreading out in all directions. "Analyze," Hyun commanded. "They appear to be cameras, sir. Simple recording devices. They're dispersing in a search pattern." Hyun felt his scales bristle. This was no coincidence. The humans were actively looking for something. For them. But how could they know? "Target those devices. Destroy them." The Righteous Authority's point defense systems activated, firing precise energy beams at the small cameras. Most were destroyed instantly, but there were so many, and they moved in erratic patterns that made them difficult to track. "Sir, the human ship is retreating," the navigator reported. Indeed, the mining vessel had turned around and was now accelerating away from them at surprising speed. "Pursue," Hyun ordered. "We cannot allow them to return with any recordings." The docile ship surged forward, easily gaining on the smaller human vessel. Within minutes, they were within optimal weapons range. "Disable their engines," Hyun commanded. "Prepare a boarding party." The weapons officer targeted the human ship's propulsion systems and fired, a perfectly calculated shot that should have left the vessel crippled but intact. Except the human ship suddenly jerked to the side, the energy beam missing it by meters. "How?" Hyun began. They've released more objects, sir, the sensor officer reported. These ones are. They appear to be generating energy fields. Before Hyun could respond, the space around his ship lit up with dozens of small explosions. The deck shuddered beneath his feet. Damage report. Minor hull breaches on decks 5 through 8, someone called out. Forward sensors are offline. Cloaking field is destabilizing. Impossible, Hyun muttered. Those explosions shouldn't have been able to damage a Dosal warship. Their shields were designed to withstand far more powerful weapons. Sir, the human ship has activated some kind of jumping device. There, a flash of light cut off the officer's words as the human vessel simply disappeared. Where did they go? Hyun demanded. Unknown, sir. We're detecting traces of an artificial subspace field, but nothing like our standard FTL technology. Hyun stood in stunned silence. The humans had technology they hadn't revealed before. They had detected a cloaked Dosal ship. They had evaded a targeted weapons strike. And now they had escaped using an unknown form of faster-than-light travel. This was not the behavior of a Class 3 civilization. Prepare a full report, he said finally. I need to contact High Admiral Suk immediately. High Admiral Suk was not pleased. You're telling me that a primitive mining vessel detected your ship, damaged it, and then escaped. Her voice was cold with fury, even across the vast distance of space. Hyun kept his head bowed in the communication chamber. Yes, Admiral. They employed technology we had not observed before. Explain. The cameras they deployed were simple enough, but contained quantum entanglement components that made them impossible to jam. The explosive devices they used generated localized subspace distortions that bypassed our shields. And their escape method. Yes, it wasn't standard faster-than-light travel, Admiral. They didn't enter subspace as we do. They folded space somehow, created a temporary wormhole. Our scientists are still analyzing the data, but they say it's technology we've never encountered before. Suk was silent for a long moment. This is concerning. But one incident does not change their classification. Continue your observation mission, Captain. This information will be passed to Commander Taiho's team for further analysis. Yes, Admiral. There is one more thing. Speak. We managed to capture some of their communications during the encounter. They were excited, Admiral, not afraid. When they detected us, their response was enthusiasm. Suk's eyes narrowed. Enthusiasm. Yes, as if finding us was a victory. Their exact words were, Hot Dan, we found one. The Council is going to flip when they see this. The Council? Suk's voice sharpened. They have a governing body called the Council. It appears so, Admiral. Interesting. Continue your observation, Captain. But do not engage again without direct orders. If they are more advanced than we believed, we need to reassess our approach. Yes, Admiral. After the communication ended, Hyun stood alone in the chamber, troubled by the encounter. In all of his years of service, he had never seen a supposedly inferior species react that way to a Dosal warship. Most would flee in terror. Some would attack in desperation. None had ever shown excitement. Perhaps Commander Taiho would make sense of this. Hyun had heard that the commander had unusual insights into alien psychology. He would need them now, because something about these humans was very, very wrong. In his private quarters, Taiho read Captain Hyun's report with growing alarm. He had suspected something like this might happen, but not so soon. The humans were aware of them now. The careful observation plan was compromised. Worst of all, the humans didn't seem afraid. Taiho opened a secure channel to High Admiral Suk. He needed to warn her, to make her understand the threat these humans might pose if handled incorrectly. Commander, Suk acknowledged when her image appeared. I assume you've reviewed Captain Hyun's report. Yes, Admiral. I am concerned that we may be underestimating these humans. Suk's expression hardened. Explain your reasoning. Their rate of technological advancement is unprecedented. They've developed space-folding technology that we didn't detect in our initial scans. They've demonstrated an ability to detect our cloaked ships. And most concerning, they reacted to contact with enthusiasm rather than fear. These are anomalies, Commander. Nothing more. With respect, Admiral, I believe we should reconsider our approach. Perhaps open diplomatic channels instead of continuing covert observation. You suggest we treat them as equals. Suk's voice was dangerous now. Tai-Ho chose his next words carefully. I suggest we treat them as an unknown quantity. Their capabilities may exceed our initial assessment. Your concern is noted, Commander, but the Council has already made its decision. We will continue as planned, with some adjustments. Increase the security around our outposts. Analyze their technology more thoroughly, but do not make contact yet. Admiral. That is all, Commander. Do your duty. The communication ended abruptly. Tai-Ho stared at the empty space where Suk's image had been. She wasn't listening. None of them were. They were too confident in their superiority, too certain of the established order of things. Tai-Ho turned back to his data on the humans. There was something here he was missing, something important about their nature. He needed to understand them better before it was too late. Because deep in his heart, where his human intuition lived, he knew that the Docile Confederation had just awakened something dangerous, something that wouldn't be easily controlled. And when High Admiral Suk realized her mistake, it might already be too late. 6 months had passed since the mining ship incident. The Docile Confederation had doubled their observation posts around the human solar system. They watched and recorded everything. Every transmission, every ship movement, every new piece of technology. Tai-Ho stood before the High Council chamber aboard the Eternal Dominance presenting his latest findings. The room was large and cold, with 7 massive chairs arranged in a half-circle. Each chair held a representative from one of the 7 species that made up the Confederation. High Admiral Suk stood to the side, her eyes fixed on Tai-Ho. The humans have increased their space activity by 300% in the last 6 months, Tai-Ho explained, gesturing to the holographic display in the center of the room. They've deployed new satellites with advanced scanning capabilities. Their ships now routinely patrol the outer edges of their system. They are looking for us, said Counselor Vex, the oldest member of the council. Yes, Tai-Ho agreed. After Captain Hyun's encounter, they know we exist, and they are preparing. Preparing for what? Asked another counselor. War, trade, communication. All of these, I believe, Tai-Ho said. Human communications suggest they have formed a unified response council to handle potential alien contact. They are building more ships, developing new technologies, and training their people. But they have also prepared diplomatic protocols. High Admiral Suk stepped forward. What Commander Tai-Ho fails to mention is that the humans remain technologically inferior. Their best weapons would barely scratch our smallest ships. Their shields are primitive. Their fastest vessels take days to travel distances our ships cover in minutes. With respect, Admiral, Tai-Ho countered, their rate of advancement is unprecedented. 6 months ago, they had no effective means of detecting our cloaked ships. Now they can find an observation post within hours of its deployment. They adapt quickly. The council members looked at each other, their expressions unreadable to most. But Tai-Ho, with his half-human intuition, could sense their uncertainty. What do you recommend, Commander? Counselor Vex asked. Tai-Ho took a deep breath. I believe we should make formal contact, establish diplomatic relations, share some of our less critical technologies in exchange for peaceful cooperation. Appeasement. Suk nearly spat the word. We do not appease lesser species. We guide them, control them, integrate them into our confederation on our terms. And if they resist, Tai-Ho asked quietly, then we show them the futility of resistance. Suk replied coldly. The council chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, Counselor Vex spoke again. We will consider both approaches. Commander Tahoe, continue your observation and analysis. Admiral Suk, begin preparations for both diplomatic contact and military intervention, should it become necessary. And who will lead these efforts? Suk asked. You will handle military preparations, Vex said. Diplomat Han will prepare for possible negotiations, and General Dai will develop our overall strategy. Suk's scales darkened in anger, a sign of displeasure that she quickly controlled. As the council wishes, she said stiffly. After the meeting, Tai-Ho returned to his ship. He knew Suk would push for confrontation. She, like most docile military leaders, believed absolutely in their superiority. The idea that humans, or any lesser species, could pose a real threat was unthinkable to them. But not to Tai-Ho. He knew what humans were capable of when pushed. His mother had told him stories of human history, of small forces defeating larger ones through ingenuity and determination, of humans achieving the impossible simply because they refused to accept failure. The Confederation was making a dangerous mistake, and Tai-Ho wasn't sure he could stop it. General Day reviewed the reports from the observation posts with growing concern. Unlike Suk, he did not dismiss Commander Tai-Ho's warnings. In his 300 years of military service, Da had learned to respect unknown variables. And humans were full of unknown variables. Show me the latest intercepts, he ordered his intelligence officer. A series of human communications appeared on the screen. Most were routine messages between ships or bases, but several stood out. Discussions of first contact protocols, debates about military readiness, and most concerning, technical specifications for new weapons and defensive systems. They're preparing for war while hoping for peace, Dai observed. Yes, General, the intelligence officer agreed. And they're doing it with remarkable speed and coordination for a supposedly fractious species. Have they detected our newest observation posts? 3 out of 7 so far, but their detection time is decreasing with each new post we deploy. Day nodded slowly. They're learning, adapting their technology based on what they find. Should we be concerned, sir? Day considered the question carefully. Concerned? Yes. Alarmed? Not yet, but we should not underestimate them as High Admiral Suk seems determined to do. He turned to another screen, which showed human military deployments throughout their system. Their ships were small and crude by docile standards, but there were many of them. And they were positioned with surprising tactical awareness, covering approaches, establishing defensive lines, maintaining overlapping fields of fire. These are not the actions of a primitive species, Dai muttered. He made a decision. Contact Commander Tai-Ho. I wish to speak with him privately. Diplomatic meetings were rarely held aboard warships, but the docile Confederation made its own rules. Diplomat Han stood in the massive docking bay of the Asterisk, Illustrious Dominion Asterisk, watching as the small human shuttle approached. It was plain and functional. No decorative elements, no grand design features, just a simple transport vessel. How fitting for such a plain species, Han thought. Beside him stood Commander Tai-Ho, who had been assigned as technical advisor for this first formal contact. Han didn't like Tai-Ho. The commander had strange ideas about how to deal with lesser species. Too soft, too willing to see value in primitive cultures. Remember, Han said, we are here to present our terms, not to negotiate. The humans will accept Confederation authority, or they will face consequences. Tai-Ho's expression remained neutral. I understand the Council's position, diplomat, but I suggest keeping an open mind. These humans may surprise you. Han made a dismissive gesture. All lesser species believe themselves special. All learn otherwise eventually. The human shuttle landed smoothly, its engines powering down with a whine. A ramp extended from its side, and 3 figures emerged. Han was prepared for their appearance. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin covered in artificial materials they called clothes. But seeing them in person was still strange. They looked so vulnerable. No natural defenses, no impressive physical features, just soft, pink creatures with patches of hair on their heads. The lead human stepped forward. Male, according to their records, named Admiral Sun. He was shorter than the docils, but held himself with surprising dignity. On behalf of the United Earth government, I greet representatives of the Docile Confederation, he said in clear, measured tones. The translation devices the docils had prepared converted his speech perfectly. We receive your greeting, Han replied formally. I am Diplomat Han, authorized representative of the Docile Confederation Council. This is Commander Taiho, our technical advisor. The human nodded to each of them. It is an honor to meet you. May I present Dr. Kim, our xenobiology specialist, and Captain Lee, my security officer. The formalities completed, Han gestured toward a doorway. We have prepared a meeting room. Please follow me. As they walked through the massive corridors of the docile ship, Han watched the humans carefully. They showed appropriate awe at the size and technology surrounding them, but less fear than Han expected. The one called Captain Lee seemed to be studying everything with a professional eye, no doubt assessing military capabilities. The meeting room was designed to impress. High ceilings, advanced holographic displays, and seats arranged so that the humans would be looking up at their docile hosts. A deliberate power display that Han had used successfully with other species. Once they were seated, Han activated the main display, showing a map of this sector of the galaxy. The vast territory of the Docile Confederation glowed in blue, while human-controlled space was a tiny green dot at the edge. For 10,000 years, the Docile Confederation has brought order and progress to this sector, Han began. Hundreds of species enjoy our protection and guidance. We have eliminated war, poverty, and suffering across thousands of worlds. The human admiral listened politely. An impressive achievement, he said. Indeed. And now we extend the same opportunity to humanity. Join the Confederation. Accept our guidance. Benefit from our advanced technology and protection. The admiral nodded slowly. And what would be required of us in return? Very little, Han said smoothly. Acceptance of Confederation law. A modest resource contribution. The hosting of docile advisors in your government and military. Standard terms for all new member species. The three humans exchanged glances. Then Admiral Sun spoke again. And if we wish to maintain our independence. Han's scales darkened slightly. Independence is an illusion, Admiral. All species are interconnected. All require guidance. The Confederation simply provides what is needed for peaceful coexistence. With respect, Diplomat Han, Admiral Sun said carefully, humans value self-determination above almost all else. We would prefer to join the galactic community as equals, not as subjects. Equals. Han couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. You misunderstand your position. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your military power is insignificant. You have barely left your own system. Our current capabilities do not define our potential, the Admiral replied. We learn quickly. Too quickly, perhaps, Han said, his voice hardening. We have observed your rapid military buildup since discovering our presence. Such actions could be interpreted as hostile. We prefer to call it prudent. Captain Lee spoke for the first time. Unknown ships watching our system without identifying themselves might also be considered hostile. The tension in the room grew thick. Taiho, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. Perhaps we should focus on areas of potential cooperation rather than points of contention, he suggested. There is much humans and dociles could learn from each other. Han shot Taiho an annoyed look. The commander was overstepping his role. Admiral Sun nodded. A wise approach. Commander, what areas of cooperation did you have in mind? Before Taiho could answer, Han cut in. The terms of cooperation will be determined by the Confederation Council. This meeting was intended to introduce you to those terms. We expect your government's response within one standard cycle. Admiral Sun's expression cooled. I see. Then we will take your terms back to our government for consideration. But I should warn you, humanity will not surrender its sovereignty easily. It is not a matter of surrender, Admiral, Han said. It is a matter of accepting reality. The Confederation's decision is final, regardless of your response. The meeting concluded shortly after, with formal but chilly farewells. As the human shuttle departed, Han turned to Taiho. You interfered with my diplomatic approach, he accused. I attempted to prevent an unnecessary escalation. Taiho replied calmly. These humans will not simply bow to our demands. They require a different approach. Your obsession with these creatures is concerning, Commander, Han said. Perhaps High Admiral Suk is right about you. Taiho didn't respond. His thoughts were on the human admiral and his team. They had shown remarkable composure. No fear, no awe, just calm assessment and quiet determination. The Confederation had just made its first major mistake in handling the humans, and Taiho feared it would not be the last. The news of the failed diplomatic meeting spread quickly through the docile command structure. High Admiral Suk was pleased. She had argued for military action from the beginning. General Dai was concerned but not surprised. And Engineer Jun, newly assigned to study human technology, was simply curious. Show me the latest human ship designs, Jun requested as he settled into his new laboratory aboard the research vessel Relentless Inquiry *. His assistant brought up holographic models of various human vessels. Most were unchanged from previous observations, simple, functional designs with obvious weapons and propulsion systems. But several new models caught Jun's attention. These are different, he muttered, examining a sleek ship with no visible engines or weapons. When did they deploy these? 3 days ago, his assistant replied. Shortly after the diplomatic meeting. 3 days? They built and deployed a new ship class in 3 days. According to our observations, yes. They launched 12 of them from their orbital shipyards. Jun studied the design more carefully. No visible propulsion system. No weapon hardpoints. What are they for? Unknown. They've taken positions at the edge of their system, approximately 1 light hour from their main planetary defense grid. Jun frowned. Something wasn't right. No species could design and build a new ship class that quickly, unless. Check our previous observations. Have we seen components of this design before? His assistant worked quickly, cross-referencing thousands of images and scans. Yes, engineer. The hull configuration resembles their atmospheric research vessels. The internal power signature matches their deep space communication relays. The guidance systems are similar to their automated mining drones. They didn't build new ships, Jun realized. They modified existing ones, combined different technologies they already had. Is that significant? Extremely. Most species develop new technologies in a linear progression. They perfect one system before moving to the next. These humans are taking components from different systems and combining them in new ways. To what end? Jun shook his head. I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. The first real battle came 3 weeks later. A docile patrol ship, the Swift Justice detected one of the mysterious human vessels approaching an observation post. Following standard protocol, Captain Mal ordered warning shots fired across the human ship's path. The human vessel didn't respond. It continued its approach, neither increasing speed nor changing course. Final warning, Captain Mal commanded. Target their propulsion systems. Disable, but do not destroy. The docile gunner fired precisely, the energy beam streaking toward the human ship's rear section. To everyone's surprise, the beam passed straight through, as if the ship wasn't there. A hologram? Captain Mal wondered aloud. Before anyone could respond, the sensors screamed warnings. Dozens of small objects were suddenly racing toward the Swift Justice from multiple directions. Defensive measures, Mal shouted. The docile ship's point defense systems activated, destroying many of the incoming objects. But there were too many, and they moved in unpredictable patterns. Several struck the hull, attaching themselves like parasites. "What are they?" the first officer asked. "Some kind of devices," the sensor operator reported. They're interfering with our systems. Shields are fluctuating. Communications are being jammed." Captain Mal had never seen anything like this. These weren't conventional weapons. They weren't trying to destroy his ship. They were disabling it. "Emergency protocols," he ordered. "Purge all systems and restart." "Sir," the sensor operator called out. 3 human warships approaching. They were hiding behind the false ship's signature. Too late, Mal realized they had been tricked. The mysterious vessel was a decoy, designed to draw their fire and reveal their position. The real attack came from ships hiding in its sensor shadow. The human warships opened fire. Unlike previous encounters, these weapons were focused and effective. They targeted the Swift Justice's communication arrays, weapon systems, and propulsion units with surgical precision. "Return fire," Mal ordered, but his weapons officer shook his head. "Targeting systems are offline. The parasitic devices have corrupted our fire control." For the first time in his long career, Captain Mal felt real fear. His technologically superior ship was being systematically disabled by what should have been a primitive enemy. "Emergency transmission to fleet headquarters," he commanded. "The humans have developed effective countermeasures. Request immediate reinforcement." The communications officer worked frantically at his station. "Message sent, sir, but I don't know if it got through. Our transmitters are operating at minimal power." The bridge shook as another human weapon struck the hull. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "Sir," the first officer said quietly, "I believe we should prepare to abandon ship." Null stared at him in shock. Abandon ship? To humans, the very thought was humiliating. But as he looked around at his failing systems and the approaching human vessels, he knew they had no choice. "Prepare evacuation protocols," he said grimly. "Destroy all sensitive data. We cannot allow Confederation technology to fall into human hands." As the crew rushed to comply, Mal stood at his command station, watching the human ships approach on the few functioning screens. They moved with confidence, coordinating their actions with unexpected precision. How had the Confederation misjudged these creatures so badly? How had primitive humans developed tactics and technology to defeat a docile warship in direct combat? The answer came to him as he prepared to leave his ship. They had been watching and learning. Every encounter, every scan, every shot fired had taught them something. While the dociles observed with arrogance, the humans studied with purpose. And now, the Swift Justice would become their latest lesson. News of the Swift Justice's defeat spread through the Confederation like wildfire. High Admiral Suk called an emergency council meeting, her rage barely contained. "These primitive creatures have attacked and disabled one of our vessels," she announced. "This cannot stand. I recommend immediate and overwhelming military response." General Day studied the battle data with a more measured expression. The humans showed unexpected tactical sophistication. They used our own protocols against us, knowing we would fire warning shots rather than immediately destroying their decoy. They also displayed new technological capabilities. Engineer June added, "The parasitic devices that disabled the Swift Justice's systems were ingenious. Simple in design but highly effective against our complex networks." "I don't care how they did it," Suk snapped. "I care about our response. We must show these humans the consequences of challenging the Confederation." Counselor Vex looked troubled. "What of the crew of the Swift Justice "Captured," Day reported, "but apparently treated well. According to the emergency beacons, the humans have offered to return them through Diplomat Han." A gesture of war followed by a gesture of peace, Taiho observed from his position at the edge of the room. Typical human approach. They demonstrate capability but avoid unnecessary cruelty. Suk turned to him with narrowed eyes. "You sound almost admiring, Commander." I am evaluating them objectively, Admiral. Understanding their methods is crucial to developing an effective response. The Council debated for hours. Some argued for patience for further study of human capabilities. Others, led by Suk, demanded immediate military action. In the end, a compromise was reached. We will deploy a battle group to the human system, Councillor Vex announced, not to attack immediately, but to demonstrate our power. Engineer Jun will develop countermeasures to their disabling technologies. Diplomat Han will communicate our displeasure and offer one final opportunity for peaceful integration. And if they refuse? Suk asked. Then we will show them the full might of the Confederation, Vex replied gravely. As the meeting ended, Taeho found himself walking alongside General Da in the corridor outside. You believe this is a mistake, Da said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes, General. Threats will not intimidate humans. They will only prepare more intensely. I fear you are right, Commander. But the Council has decided. What do you think will happen, General? Da was silent for a moment. I think we are about to discover whether 10,000 years of dominance has made us wise, or merely complacent. The words hung in the air between them as they parted ways. Taeho returned to his quarters, his mind troubled. The Confederation was moving inexorably toward conflict with humanity, and despite all his efforts, he could not stop it. He could only hope that when the true capabilities of humans were finally revealed, it would not be too late for his people to adapt. Because one thing was becoming increasingly clear: the humans already had. The docile battle group was an impressive sight. 12 massive warships, each capable of destroying an entire planet, arranged in perfect formation as they approached the human solar system. Smaller vessels swarmed around them like insects, handling reconnaissance and defense. In total, over 500 docile ships had been deployed. The largest military force the Confederation had assembled in 2,000 years. High Admiral Suk stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Supreme Dominance *, watching as the stars streaked by. Her scales gleamed with pride. This would be her greatest triumph, the integration of a troublesome species into the Confederation through overwhelming force. The humans would see this fleet and understand the futility of resistance. We will reach the outer boundary of their system in 6 hours, Admiral, her navigation officer reported. Excellent. Alert all ships to prepare for combat protocols. I want weapons charged and ready the moment we arrive. General Da, who had been assigned as strategic advisor for the operation, frowned slightly. Admiral, the Council's orders were to demonstrate our power, not to attack immediately. Suk's eyes narrowed. I am well aware of the Council's orders, General, but we must be prepared for any response. These humans have shown unusual aggression. They've shown unusual everything, Da muttered, but not loudly enough for Suk to hear. Commander Taeho stood quietly to one side, reviewing data from the latest human communications intercepts. What he saw troubled him deeply. The humans were not panicking as the massive fleet approached. Their military channels were calm, organized, discussing deployments and contingencies with remarkable discipline. Most concerning was a repeating reference to something called the Swarm Protocol. Taeho had no idea what this meant, but the frequency with which it appeared in high-level communications suggested it was important. Admiral, he said, stepping forward, I believe we should be cautious. The humans appear to have prepared for our arrival. Suk barely glanced at him. Of course they have, and their preparations will prove useless against our technology. With respect, Admiral, they've adapted quickly to our previous encounters. They may have developed new countermeasures, such as... Suk's tone was dismissive. Taeho hesitated. I'm not certain, but they repeatedly referenced something called the Swarm Protocol in their communications. This caught General Da's attention. What do we know about this protocol? Nothing definitive, General. It appears to be a military response plan, but the details are encrypted beyond our current ability to decode. Suk made a dismissive gesture. It doesn't matter. No human technology can stand against this fleet. We will give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will demonstrate our power by destroying their orbital defenses. That should be sufficient to ensure their cooperation." Tai-Ho and Dae exchanged concerned glances, but neither argued further. The battle group continued its approach, the fate of two species hanging in the balance. Admiral Sun stood in Earth's Unified Defense Headquarters, studying the massive holographic display that showed the approaching Dosal fleet. Around him, dozens of military officers from countries across the planet worked at their stations, coordinating humanity's response. "They've brought quite a reception party," commented his second-in-command, Captain Lee. 500 ships, at least." "As expected," Sun replied calmly. "The Dosals rely on overwhelming force to intimidate. They've done it to countless other species. But not to us." "No," Sun agreed. "Not to us." He turned to face the assembled officers. "Status report on swarm protocol deployments." A young officer stepped forward. "All units are in position, Admiral. Swarm platforms, Alpha through Zulu, are powered down and running on minimal stealth systems. Neural interface pilots are standing by. Success rate in simulations has reached 92%. And our conventional forces. Defense grid is at full readiness. Colony evacuation protocols are complete. The Mars and lunar bases have transferred all civilian personnel to safe locations." Sun nodded, satisfied. "And our new ships, the Asterisk Adaptation Asterisk-class vessels, have all been fitted with the modified shields and countermeasures developed from our analysis of Dosal technology. They're as ready as they'll ever be, sir." "Good." Sun turned back to the holographic display. "The Dosals believe this show of force will make us surrender. They think their technological advantage makes them invincible." He smiled slightly. "Let's show them how humans respond to bullies." The Dosal battle group exited faster than light travel at the edge of the human solar system. Immediately, sensors detected human defense satellites and ships moving to intercept. "Their response force is smaller than expected," Sook's sensor officer reported, sounding confused. "Only 53 vessels approaching. Most appear to be the same design we encountered at the Asterisk Swift Justice Asterisk incident. They're sending their most effective ships," General Dai observed. "But the numbers are still insignificant compared to our force." "Open communications," Sook ordered. "Let's give them their one chance to surrender." The communications officer worked at his station. "Channel open, Admiral." Sook stepped forward. "This is High Admiral Sook of the Dosal Confederation. Your species has demonstrated hostility against Confederation forces. This is unacceptable. You will immediately cease all military activities, disable your weapon systems, and prepare to receive Confederation representatives who will oversee your integration. Refusal will result in the destruction of your military capabilities." There was a long pause before the response came. When it did, Admiral Sun's voice was calm and steady. "This is Admiral Sun of the United Earth Defense Force. We have no hostile intentions toward the Dosal Confederation. However, we will defend our sovereignty. We invite peaceful dialogue, but we reject any demand for surrender or integration, as you call it." Sook's scales darkened with anger. "You fail to understand your situation, human. The force assembled here could reduce your entire civilization to ash. This is your final warning." "We understand perfectly, Admiral Sook," Sun replied. "And we have a warning of our own. Retreat now. Any hostile action against human forces or territory will be met with proportional response." Sook cut the communication with a sharp gesture. "Arrogant creatures. They dare to threaten us." She turned to her weapons officer. "Target their lead vessels. Disable their propulsion and weapons systems." "Admiral." Tai-Ho intervened. "Perhaps we should consider." "Silence, Commander. I have listened to your concerns long enough. It is time to show these humans the consequence of defiance." The massive weapons of the Asterisk Supreme Dominance Asterisk powered up, targeting the approaching human ships. Energy beams lanced out across space, perfectly aimed to cripple rather than destroy. But something unexpected happened. The beams struck what appeared to be empty space several kilometers in front of the human vessels. The energy dispersed in glowing patterns, like ripples on water. What happened? Suk demanded. Some kind of advanced shielding technology, the weapons officer reported, sounding confused. Nothing like we've seen from them before. Impossible, Suk muttered. They couldn't have developed shields capable of blocking our weapons so quickly. General Da looked troubled, unless they adapted the technology from studying our own shields. Before Suk could respond, the sensor officer called out in alarm. Admiral, we're detecting hundreds of small energy signatures activating throughout the system. They were hidden, waiting. The swarm protocol, Taiho whispered. Suddenly, the space around the docile battle group came alive with small, fast-moving objects. Thousands of them, appearing from behind asteroids, from within gas clouds, from places the docile sensors had registered as empty space. What are they? Suk demanded. Small craft, the sensor officer reported, each about the size of a shuttle. Minimal life support systems, powerful engines, and we're detecting unusual neural energy patterns. Neural? Dai asked sharply. Yes, General. They appear to be directly controlled by human minds, somehow. Taiho understood immediately. Neural interfaces. The humans are piloting these craft with their minds, not their bodies. That's why they can move so unpredictably. The swarm of small human craft surrounded the docile fleet, their movements unlike anything the Confederation had ever encountered. They didn't fly in formation. They didn't follow standard attack patterns. Each moved independently, yet somehow coordinated with the whole. Open fire, Suk commanded. Destroy them. The docile fleet's weapons activated, energy beams, and projectiles streaming toward the human swarm. Some found their targets, destroying the small craft in bright explosions. But most missed, the human vessels changing direction with impossible speed and precision. And then the swarm attacked. The small craft didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they attached themselves to the hulls of the docile ships like the parasitic devices used against the Asterisk Swift Justice Asterisk, but on a much larger scale. Once attached, they began to drill through the outer armor. They're breaching our hulls, someone shouted. Deploy defense drones. Suk ordered. Repel boarders. But these weren't conventional boarding parties. From each breach point, smaller devices emerged, about the size of a human hand. They scurried through the ships like insects, attaching to control systems, weapons, engines, and communications. Our systems are being compromised, the Asterisk Supreme Dominance's Asterisk computer specialist reported, his voice rising in panic. They're introducing some kind of code. It's bypassing our security too quickly to stop. Ship after ship reported similar breaches. Within minutes, the proud docile battle group was in chaos. Weapons systems failed. Engines shut down. Communication between vessels became impossible. Suk watched in growing horror as her mighty fleet was systematically disabled by creatures she had considered primitive just hours before. How? She whispered. How is this possible? In his laboratory aboard the research vessel Asterisk, Relentless Inquiry Asterisk, Engineer Jun worked frantically to understand what was happening. His ship, positioned far behind the main battle group, was so far unaffected by the human attack. This gave him a unique vantage point to analyze the human technology. These devices, he murmured, studying the sensor readings from the breached ships. They're so simple, yet so effective. His assistant looked confused. Simple. They're defeating our most advanced systems. Yes, but not through superior technology, Jun explained. Look at this. The devices themselves are basic, little more than transmitters with mechanical interfaces, but the way they're used, the humans found vulnerabilities in our systems we never considered. How could they know our systems so well? June thought back to all the encounters with human ships over the past year. Each time, the humans had seemed to learn something new. Each time, they had adapted. They've been studying us, he realized. Every encounter, every scan, every transmission they intercepted. They were learning our weaknesses. He turned to another screen, which showed readings from the neural-controlled swarm craft. And this is truly remarkable. The humans are directly linking their minds to these vessels. No Confederation species has achieved this. Our neural structures are too rigid, too specialized. But human brains are different. Apparently so. More adaptable. More plastic is the term they use. They can form new neural connections in ways we cannot. As June studied the data, a new realization struck him. This isn't just an attack. It's a demonstration. They're showing us what they can do without actually destroying us. He looked up at his assistant, his eyes wide. They could have equipped those breach devices with explosives. They could have targeted life support systems, but they didn't. What does that mean? It means, Jung said slowly, that the humans are more advanced than we thought. Not just technologically, but ethically. They're defeating us while minimizing casualties. He turned back to his screens. We need to understand them better, before it's too late. Researcher Min was not a military officer. Her expertise was in neural patterns and cognitive structures. But the strange readings from the human swarm craft had prompted her superiors to send her data from the battle, hoping she might make sense of it. What she found astounded her. These neural patterns, she said to her colleague as they studied the readings in their laboratory on the docile homeworld, they're unlike anything I've seen in any species. How so? Most species, including dociles, have specialized neural structures. Our brains evolve for specific functions and remain relatively fixed throughout our lives. But these human patterns, she gestured to the screen, they're constantly forming new connections. They adapt in real time. Her colleague moved closer to examine the data. Is that why they can interface directly with machines? Yes, I believe so. Their brains can learn to interpret artificial inputs as if they were natural senses. They can control external systems as if they were extensions of their own bodies. Min looked up, her expression troubled. Do you understand what this means? That they have advanced neural technology? No, it means they're evolving, not over millennia, but within their own lifetimes. Each human can adapt, learn, change. And they're doing it faster than any species we've encountered. As Min continued to study the data, she began to understand why the Confederation's standard approach had failed so completely with humans. The dociles had assumed technological superiority would be enough, as it had been with hundreds of other species. But humans didn't fight with just technology. They fought with creativity, adaptability, and a seemingly limitless capacity to learn from failure. We need to report this immediately, she said, gathering her findings. The Council needs to understand what we're really facing. Back at the battle, the situation had gone from bad to worse for the docile fleet. 3/4 of their ships were now completely disabled, floating helplessly in space. The rest had suffered partial system failures and were struggling to maintain basic functions. On the bridge of the Asterisk, Supreme Dominance Asterisk, High Admiral Suk watched in stunned disbelief as her mighty fleet was defeated without a single ship being destroyed. The humans had targeted systems, not lives, a concept so foreign to docile military doctrine that she could barely comprehend it. Admiral, her first officer said quietly, we've lost control of all major systems except life support and emergency propulsion. The humans are hailing us. Suk wanted to refuse to fight on somehow, but there was nothing left to fight with. Put them through, she said, her voice hollow. Admiral Sun's face appeared on the main screen. Unlike Suk, he showed no triumph, no gloating. His expression was serious, even respectful. High Admiral Suk, your fleet has been disabled but not destroyed. We have no desire for unnecessary casualties. We offer safe passage back to your territory for all your personnel. Your ships, however, will remain in our custody until formal peace agreements can be negotiated. Sook's scales darkened with humiliation and rage. You cannot dictate terms to the docile Confederation. We have ruled this sector for 10,000 years, and perhaps you will continue to do so, Sun replied calmly, but not through force. Not with humanity. We offer friendship and mutual respect, or if necessary, we offer resistance. The choice is yours. As Sook struggled to respond, Commander Tahoe stepped forward. Admiral Sun, this is Commander Tahoe. May I ask what your terms would be for a formal peace? Sun's expression softened slightly. Recognition of human sovereignty. Non-interference in our affairs. Open trade and cultural exchange if desired. The same terms we would offer any other advanced civilization. You consider yourselves our equals? Sook asked incredulously. Today's events would suggest we are. Sun replied simply. The bridge was silent. Even Sook could not argue with the evidence before her eyes. Her mighty fleet, disabled by a species she had considered primitive just hours before. We will consider your offer, she said finally. Good. We will maintain position and await your response. Safe journey, Admiral. The communication ended. Sook turned to face her officers. All looked to her for direction, but for the first time in her long career, she had none to give. The unthinkable had happened. The docile Confederation had suffered its first major defeat in thousands of years. Prepare evacuation protocols, she said at last. All personnel to emergency vessels. As the crew moved to comply, Sook found herself standing alone with Commander Tahoe and General Da. You were right, she admitted bitterly to Tahoe. We underestimated them. Tahoe nodded solemnly. The question now is whether we can learn from this mistake, or whether we will compound it with further miscalculations. What would you suggest? Daddy asked. That we take the humans at their word. That we recognize them as equals and seek genuine cooperation rather than domination. Sook's scales darkened. The Council will never agree. It would undermine the very foundation of the Confederation. Then, Tahoe said quietly, the Confederation may have met its match. News of the fleet's defeat spread quickly through the docile Confederation. For a society unused to military failure, the shock was profound. Emergency council sessions were convened. Military strategies were revised. And everywhere, the same questions were asked. How had this happened? What were these humans truly capable of? Commander Yun, a mid-level officer who had witnessed the battle from one of the few ships that escaped relatively unscathed, found herself summoned to address the council. She had never expected such an honor, or such a burden. Tell us what you saw, Counselor Vex instructed as Un stood before the 7 leaders of the Confederation. Un took a deep breath. The humans defeated us through adaptation and precision. They studied our technology, found its weaknesses, and exploited them with remarkable efficiency. Could we not do the same to them? Another counselor asked. Un hesitated. In theory, yes, but their approach to technology is different from ours, less standardized, more diverse. They use many systems in parallel rather than relying on a single, perfect solution as we do. Explain, Vex demanded. Our ships all use the same shield frequency, the same weapon calibrations, the same communication protocols. It makes our fleets operate with perfect coordination, but it also means that once the humans found a weakness in one ship, they could exploit it across our entire fleet. The council members exchanged troubled glances, and their neural interface technology. Vex asked. Unlike anything we have developed, Yun admitted. Their minds connect directly with their machines. It gives them reaction times and coordination that our pilots cannot match. Could we develop similar technology? Lun glanced at researcher Min, who had been called to this same meeting. Min stepped forward. Not easily, she explained. Human neural structures are uniquely adaptable. Our brains are more specialized, more fixed. We could potentially develop something similar, But it would take years, perhaps decades of research. 3 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. The docile confederation was in turmoil. For the first time in thousands of years, the 7 ruling species faced a truth they had never imagined. They were not the most powerful force in their part of the galaxy. On the docile homeworld, citizens gathered in public spaces, watching news broadcasts with shock and disbelief. Images showed human ships patrolling what had once been Confederation territory. The outer colonies, sensing weakness, began to question their loyalty to the central government. 2 of the 7 member species had already sent secret delegations to meet with human representatives. In the Great Hall of the Supreme Council, an emergency session had been called. All 7 counselors were present, along with High Admiral Suk, General Dai, and Commander Taho. The mood was grim. "The situation continues to deteriorate," reported the intelligence minister. "Human forces have established bases in 3 star systems along our border. They've made contact with 14 of our subject worlds, offering them independence with protection." Protection. Suk spat the word. "They mean control." "Actually," the minister continued, "their terms are surprisingly generous. No resource demands, no military occupation, just trade agreements and mutual defense pacts." "They're dismantling our empire without firing a shot," Councillor Vex observed. "We should strike now," Suk insisted. "We've analyzed their tactics, developed countermeasures. Our new fleet is nearly ready. A fleet built in 3 months cannot match what we lost," General Dai said calmly. "And the humans haven't been idle. Our intelligence suggests they've continued to advance their technology at an alarming rate, using our own captured ships and technology." Suk countered. "They're thieves, not innovators." Commander Taho, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "With respect, Admiral, that view misunderstands their greatest strength. Humans don't simply steal technology. They improve it, adapt it, combine it with their own ideas to create something new." All eyes turned to him. Taho knew he was taking a risk by speaking so directly, but the situation was too dire for politics. "Consider their neural interface technology," he continued. "They didn't steal that from us. We don't have anything like it. They developed it themselves, then combined it with elements of our propulsion and weapons systems to create something entirely new." "The commander makes a valid point," General Dai agreed. "Every report from our research teams suggests the same conclusion. Humans are advancing decades of technology in months." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If the humans were already more than a match for docile forces, and their rate of advancement continued to accelerate, where would they be in a year? In 5 years? The silence was broken by the arrival of a new figure, a docile of extraordinary age, wearing the ancient ceremonial robes of supreme leadership. Everyone in the room immediately stood and bowed deeply. "Supreme Leader Bo," Councillor Vex said with reverence, "we are honored by your presence." Bo rarely appeared in public. As the oldest living docile and the ultimate authority of the Confederation, he spent most of his time in meditation and study, leaving daily governance to the Council. His appearance now signaled the severity of the crisis. "I have read all reports," Bo said, his voice thin but commanding. "I have studied these humans extensively, and I have reached a conclusion that many of you will find difficult to accept." The room was completely silent as Bo moved slowly to the center of the chamber. "The docile Confederation stands at a crossroads. For 10,000 years, we have ruled through superior technology, superior organization, and when necessary, superior force. That era is ending." Murmurs of shock and disagreement rippled through the room, but fell silent when Bo raised his hand. "These humans are different from any species we have encountered. They learn not just as individuals, but as a civilization. They adapt, they innovate, and most importantly, they unite in the face of external threats." "But Supreme Leader," Suk protested, "they were disunited when we first observed them. They had hundreds of competing governments." "Yes," Bo agreed, And when they detected our presence, how long did it take them to form a unified response? Sook had no answer. Months, Bo said. A species that spent centuries fighting amongst themselves united almost overnight when faced with a common threat. That is their true strength, not their technology, impressive though it has become, but their ability to change, to adapt, to overcome challenges that would destroy most civilizations. The Supreme Leader moved to the large window overlooking the capital city. I have made my decision. We will open formal peace negotiations with the humans. We will recognize their sovereignty and their territorial claims. We will offer alliance rather than dominance. This is unprecedented, one of the counselors exclaimed. Yes, Bo agreed, as are the humans themselves. Sook stepped forward, her scales dark with emotion. Supreme Leader, I beg you to reconsider. This will be seen as weakness throughout the Confederation. The subject worlds will rebel. The outer colonies will declare independence. Everything we have built over millennia will crumble. Bo regarded her calmly. Perhaps, or perhaps we will evolve, as the humans do. Perhaps we will build something new, something better. He turned to address the entire room. Commander Taeho will lead our diplomatic mission. His unique perspective on human psychology has proven valuable. Taeho felt a shock run through him. Supreme Leader, I am honored, but I am not a diplomat. No, Bo agreed. You are something more valuable. A bridge between our worlds. He fixed Taeho with a knowing gaze. Your mixed heritage gives you insights none of us possess. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. Taeho felt cold fear in his stomach. His secret, his human mother, was known to the Supreme Leader himself. Yes, Bo said, seeing the shock on Taeho's face. I have known for many years. Did you think such a thing could remain hidden forever? But rather than a weakness, I see it as your greatest strength, and perhaps the salvation of our people. Taeho bowed deeply, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. I will serve to the best of my ability, Supreme Leader. I know you will. Bo turned back to the council. Prepare the diplomatic vessel. Contact the human leadership. The age of docile dominance is ending. Let us ensure it ends not in destruction, but in transformation. President Jin of the United Earth Government stood at the window of the orbital conference station, watching as the docile diplomatic vessel docked. Unlike their previous warships, this one was smaller, elegant, clearly designed for ceremony rather than combat. Quite a change from a few months ago, Admiral Sun observed, standing beside her. Indeed, Jin agreed. From invasion fleet to diplomatic mission, I'm still not entirely convinced this isn't some kind of trick. Our intelligence suggests it's genuine. The docile Confederation is in disarray. 2 of their member species have already reached out to us independently. Their subject worlds are beginning to rebel. They need this peace more than we do. And yet, Jin said thoughtfully, they ruled this sector for 10,000 years. Such power doesn't disappear overnight. No, Sun agreed, but it can transform. That's what we're offering them. A chance to transform rather than fall. Jin nodded. Her election as the first president of the unified Earth government had come as a surprise to many, including herself. A historian by training, she brought a perspective that military and political leaders sometimes lacked, an understanding that great powers rarely fall simply through military defeat. They fall when they fail to adapt to new realities. Our delegation is ready, Sun reported. The meeting will begin as soon as the dociles have completed their docking procedures. Good. Let's hope both our species are ready for what comes next. The neutral meeting room had been carefully designed to put both delegations at ease. The lighting, temperature, and even the composition of the air were adjusted to be comfortable for both species. The circular table emphasized equality. No head, no foot, just representatives sitting together. Commander Taeho led the docile delegation into the room. Behind him came Diplomat Han, looking uncomfortable with his diminished status, and several other docile officials. General Da had also come, representing the military perspective. Notably absent was High Admiral Suk, who had refused to participate in what she called the surrender of our rightful dominance. President Jin rose to greet them, extending her hand in the human gesture of welcome. Commander Taho, welcome aboard. I am President Jin of the United Earth Government. Taho hesitated only briefly before taking her hand, a gesture no docile would normally make. President Jin, thank you for agreeing to these talks. We come seeking peace between our peoples. As they took their seats, Taho felt the weight of history on his shoulders. He was not just a commander now, but a bridge between two civilizations, each powerful in their own way, each capable of destroying the other. Before we begin, President Jin said, I think it would be helpful to understand each other better. Not just our demands and concessions, but our hopes and fears, our visions for the future. Diplomat hand shifted uncomfortably. Such discussions are not typical of Confederation negotiations. Perhaps that's why you're here today, Jin replied gently. Perhaps typical approaches are no longer sufficient. Taho nodded. The president is right. We must find a new way forward. He took a deep breath. And in that spirit, I would like to share something personal. The room fell silent. The docile delegation looked confused. Personal revelations were not part of their diplomatic tradition. I am not fully docile, Taho said simply. My mother was human. The human delegation showed little surprise. Their intelligence had likely uncovered this fact. But the dociles, except for General Da, looked shocked. My mother was part of a scientific expedition that encountered a docile research vessel 60 years ago. Instead of conflict, the scientists on both sides chose cooperation. My father, a docile xenobiologist, and my mother were together, eventually falling in love despite all the biological and cultural differences. Taho paused, gathering his thoughts. Their relationship was kept secret. Such connections between dociles and lesser species were forbidden. But they found a way. And from their union, I was born, living proof that our species can do more than fight or dominate each other. We can understand each other, learn from each other, perhaps even love each other. The room was silent. Even Diplomat Han seemed moved by the story. For my entire life, Taho continued, I have lived between worlds. Not fully docile, not fully human. I've seen the strengths and weaknesses of both. And I believe with all my heart that together we can build something greater than either of us could alone. President Jin nodded slowly. Thank you for sharing your story, Commander. It gives me hope for what we might accomplish here. She turned to address the entire docile delegation. Humanity does not seek the fall of the docile confederation. We do not want your territory, your resources, or your submission. We want only the freedom to determine our own destiny, and the opportunity to work together as equals. General Day leaned forward. Your military capabilities suggest you could demand much more. Why don't you? Because domination breeds resistance, Jin replied. As I believe you're discovering with your own subject worlds, we prefer willing partners to reluctant subjects. The negotiations continued for days. There were difficult moments, heated disagreements, and occasional threats to abandon the talks altogether. But slowly, painfully, a framework began to emerge, a new relationship between humans and dociles, based not on domination, but on mutual respect. The Seoul Docile Concordat, as it came to be called, recognized human sovereignty over their home system and colonies. It established rules for trade, cultural exchange, and scientific cooperation. And most importantly, it acknowledged both species as equals, with neither having authority over the other. For the Docile Confederation, it was an unprecedented concession. For humanity, it was a remarkable achievement, recognition as a galactic power without the need for destructive war. 1 month later, Commander Taho stood on the observation deck of the Peaceful Accord *, a new class of ship designed jointly by human and docile engineers. Behind him, a small delegation of docile officials waited nervously for their first official visit to Earth. The door slid open, And to Tai-Ho's surprise, High Admiral Suk entered. She had been conspicuously absent from all peace negotiations, her opposition to the new policy well known. "Admiral," Tai-Ho said, bowing slightly, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to be here," Suk replied. Her scales were a neutral gray now, the color of resignation rather than anger. "But Supreme Leader Bo insisted that I witness this historic moment personally. To punish you. Perhaps, or perhaps to educate me." Suk moved to stand beside him at the window, watching as Earth grew larger in their view. "It's beautiful," she admitted reluctantly. "Their world." "Yes," Tai-Ho agreed, "as is ours." They stood in silence for a moment, two docils looking at the homeworld of humanity, a species that had, in less than 2 years, completely upended 10,000 years of Confederation history. "How did they do it?" Suk asked finally, her voice quiet. "How did they defeat us so completely, so quickly?" Tai-Ho considered the question carefully. "They didn't fight the way we expected," he said at last. "We thought our superior technology made us invincible, but the humans never saw technology as the deciding factor." "What did they see?" "Will, determination, the absolute rejection of defeat as a possibility." Tai-Ho turned to face his former superior. "When we first encountered them, we classified them by their technology. That was our first mistake. We should have classified them by their adaptability, their creativity, their ability to unite against common threats." Suk was silent for a long moment. "And now? What happens to the Confederation now?" "It changes," Tai-Ho said simply. "As all things must. The humans have a saying. Adapt or die. For 10,000 years, the Confederation has remained essentially unchanged. We stopped adapting because we faced no challenges we couldn't overcome through force. The humans have given us something we've lacked for millennia. And what is that? A reason to evolve." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the rest of the delegation. It was time to board the shuttle that would take them to Earth for the formal signing ceremony. As they prepared to depart, Suk placed a hand on Tai-Ho's arm. "Your mother," she said quietly. "She would be proud of what you've accomplished." Tai-Ho felt unexpected emotion rise in his throat. "Thank you, Admiral. I'd like to think both our peoples would be proud of what we're beginning today." The signing ceremony took place in the Great Hall of the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. Representatives from all human nations and colonies stood alongside delegates from the 7 species of the Docile Confederation. Supreme Leader Bo and President Jin sat at the center, flanked by their advisors. As Commander Tai-Ho watched the 2 leaders sign the historic document, he felt a sense of completion. His entire life had been leading to this moment, this bridge between worlds. His divided heritage, once a source of shame and secrecy, had become his greatest strength. After the ceremony, as the delegations mingled in cautious celebration, President Jin approached Tai-Ho. "Commander," she said warmly, "or should I say Ambassador now?" Tai-Ho smiled. "I'm still getting used to the title myself. You've accomplished something remarkable here. Many thought peace between our species was impossible. As did many of my people," Tai-Ho admitted. "Some still do. Admiral Suk, for instance." Jin glanced across the room to where Suk stood stiffly, avoiding interaction with the humans around her. "She'll come around, or her successor will. Change takes time." "Yes," Tai-Ho agreed. "But it begins with moments like this, small steps that lead to larger transformations." Jin studied him curiously. "May I ask you something personal, Ambassador?" "Of course." "Your mother, what would she think of all this?" Tai-Ho felt a pang of emotion. His mother had died many years ago, never seeing the union of the 2 species she had loved. She always believed this day would come, not through conquest or submission, but through understanding. She used to tell me that the greatest strength of both our species was not in our differences, but in what we could become when those differences were joined together. Jin nodded thoughtfully. A wise woman. And she was right. She looked around the room, at humans and dozels cautiously beginning to interact. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Yes, Taiho agreed. Just the beginning. As the celebration continued around them, Taiho thought about the journey that had brought them here. From first contact to near war to an uneasy peace, the road ahead would not be easy. There would be setbacks, misunderstandings, perhaps even conflicts. But a door had been opened that could never be closed again. The docile confederation had ruled through force for 10,000 years. That era was ending. But what replaced it might be something greater, a partnership of equals, each bringing their unique strengths to create something neither could achieve alone. In the end, the dozels had not fallen to human weapons or technology. They had fallen to human ideas, to the concept that different did not mean lesser, that cooperation could be more powerful than domination, that adaptation was not weakness but strength. And in that fall, perhaps both species would rise higher than either had imagined possible. Later that night, as the Earth's sun set over the Geneva Lake, Supreme Leader Bo and High Admiral Suk stood on a balcony overlooking the water. The old leader had been silent for some time, watching the play of light on the waves. "You still disapprove," Bo said finally. It wasn't a question. "I accept the necessity," Suk replied carefully. "But yes, I believe we have conceded too much." Bo nodded slowly. "Perhaps, or perhaps we have gained more than we realize." He turned to face her. "Tell me, Admiral, in all your years of service to the Confederation, what has been our greatest weakness?" Suk considered the question. "Complacency, perhaps. We became too confident in our superiority." "Yes," Bo agreed. "Stability breeds complacency. Complacency breeds stagnation. For thousands of years, we have not needed to change, to grow, to challenge ourselves. The humans have given us that gift." "A gift?" Suk couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. "Yes, the gift of challenge. The gift of change." Bo looked back toward the building where the ceremony had taken place. "Did you know that human history is filled with examples of civilizations that fell not because they were conquered, but because they failed to adapt to changing circumstances?" "No," Suk admitted. "I have studied them extensively since our defeat. They understand something we have forgotten. Greatness is not static. It must be renewed with each generation, tested, proven." The ancient leader's eyes were bright in the fading light. "The docile confederation did not fall today, Admiral. It was reborn." As darkness settled over the earth, Bo's words hung in the air between them. For Suk, raised in the absolute certainty of docile superiority, they were difficult to accept. But as she looked at the human city spread out before them, a civilization that had gone from primitive flight to defeating the Confederation in less than 2 centuries, she began to understand. The humans had not destroyed the dozels. They had changed them, and perhaps in the long span of history, that change would be seen not as a defeat, but as the beginning of something far greater than conquest could ever achieve. This was how they finally fell to the humans, not through destruction, but through transformation, not in darkness, but in the light of a new understanding. And in their fall, they had begun to rise again.